may I ask a question? Has the Gen J committee seen this?
Gen J committee was represented on this panel, and in fact, if you notice, many of the recommendations would send this to the Gen J.
Okay, yeah, that's why if I asked,
The
Claudia's the
chair
chair.
of the Gen J committee was a member of this panel, and they certainly had an.
I was just curious because Claudia's the committee chair now, and she and I talked about a couple of these things. I just didn't know if she was missing it, but I'll figure it out.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, John, are you looking for the board to vote and endorse these ideas? Is that what, or are we?
I don't think so. Yeah, with the exception of maybe one or two where I think there is a board vote required, and you and I both know which ones those are. I think Joe did a very good job of outlining his response to the 21, which he thinks staff can do already, which I think Joe some of already underway, and which would require some vote here. I think it's only one or two that actually require.
Are we talking about the postgraduate membership and the job bank?
Exactly. Those are these.
All right. Well, we can talk about those. Now, it might be easy. The postgraduate membership, apparently that would take a bylaws change because that's in the bylaw. And some people suggest that we tweak the bylaws anyway to take some of that detail out of the bylaws and make it more policy. And I mean, bylaws don't have to be that specific. So it might be easier just to take them out of the bylaws and then create policy that we can change more easily, right? And I don't have the bylaws in front of me, Joe, but what's your thinking on that?
I think there's two things. The bylaws committee would have to take it and look at it and figure out how to make it work. And then I think they could come back with the proposal of we've updated this section or we're going to strip it out altogether. And then the second piece of it is the financial implications, which we have not researched yet. So I think from this group, the question is, do we want staff to go forward and research this? And do we want the bylaws committee to take a look at this? And if they say yes, then the work begins. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. And I guess you need direction from the board on whether or not the board thinks it's a good idea to extend postgraduate membership 1 year, 2, 3, or 4 years. We need that direction. So we can roll with a motion on that if anyone wants to do a motion on that. Move to extend or look into extending postgraduate membership from 1 year to how many years?
Can I speak to that, Dave?
Yeah.
Currently the postgraduate rate of $37.50, people can use that for 3 years after they graduate.
Oh.
So what the committee is talking about is making it 4 years after they graduate. But there are special deals where if you join for 2 years, you get the third free, and those can all stay on the table. The root of the question is, do we want to allow students 4 years after school to still get that rate?
Good. Right. So that's essentially the motion. Repeat it.
Yes.
The motion is to have the bylaws committee looking, well, that we support the concept of extending postgraduate membership next 3 years.
I think we were saying that we would look into it.
That's what I thought we were
Is that
talking
what?
about.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I thought I was going to.
What kind of motion is that? Okay, that we'll look into it.
Well, I think when
we
we
need a
motion
for that. To look into something. What are we asking? Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Can I amend that motion that we direct headquarters to examine the financial impact of adding a 4th year, bring that back to this board so we can vote with some authority?
We can do that. Bring it back to April. I think that's what you were saying.
Okay. And can I say something about the reason I moved it is because I have a lot of students who get out and it takes them up to 4 years to find a job right now. And it's not that they're not qualified, it's not that they don't have the talent, it's just finding the work.
Okay. So we started discussion, and it was seconded by Sue.
Yeah.
Sue Stevens. So discussion. Becky's saying this is important. People are having a tough time getting work. Yes. Andy.
This might sound like a dumb question, but since this idea has been around for several months, I just want to make sure we don't already know what the financial impact is.
Do we know the financial impact? No.
I've not looked at it.
Good question. Michael?
How many postgrad members do we have?
But look at the latest membership stats. I want it 600 or 900. I know that's not a good range. It's jumping out at me. I'd have to go back and look at the stats.
So if all of them went re-up for a fourth year, that's how much economic impact would be, correct?
Right.
3650 times 600 to 900.
Correct, but you also have to figure in how many would drop off because the rates jumped to 75. Like how many do we lose? That's going to be a jump.
I guess how much?
974 in the
So,
last.
so in the last year, the worst economic impact was 974 times 3650, correct? If everyone is a post-grad up to that third year signed up for a fourth year, we would lose 3650 times 974.
I have to look at it. I'm not sure.
Or you gain that much because
Right.
otherwise they wouldn't do.
That's
I know, I'm trying to say what the worst, I'm a worst case scenario coming out of it.
Any other discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we will look into it and bring that back in April. I suppose, right, Jim? Okay. The other item is the job bank thing, and we did talk about this in Indy, right? Did we?
We talked about it at DC.
Oh, in
That's
DC.
what exactly.
In GC, in exec, that's right. That's one thing I love about streaming these meetings. By the way, this is being streamed live and will be recorded. I mean, another accomplishment for this year, I think. And I found it helpful going back and looking through it. It's very helpful for me too. So job bank, the proposal there is to talk, well, I guess we're going to talk about whether we want to abandon it or build it up. Is that the options here, Joe? Patty?
So first, a couple of questions. It features 5 ads, and it brings in 14,000 in revenue. I don't understand. Are these some really expensive ads?
No. So here's how this works. So it's called Boxwood. It's a third-party job bank company. And we are in a group kind of like a Chamber of Commerce situation where we and several other companies, not even in journalism, kind of share the revenue. So the bottom line is SPJ does not, quote unquote, pull its weight when it comes to putting money into the pot. We haven't for 4 years. This is the first year I actually even put this number in our budget because I kept waiting for it to go away because I didn't think it could possibly continue, and it has. And so we make money off of other companies outside of journalism posting jobs. That's the short of it.
Michael?
I was listening to your executive committee meeting. You guys did a pretty good job of summing it up there. Could someone sort of I mean, that was part of it, but you guys went through the whole thing. I think you did. You can just give us a summary of that.
Yeah, the question on the table, I think, is simple. Do we want to have a job bank that doesn't have very many ads that some members could look at and be frustrated by in exchange for $14,000?
But you said that it was exclusive, right? We're not allowed to add to it.
Right. We can't create our own. Our contract says we can't have our own separate job bank separate from this one. If SPJ is to have a job bank, it must be this one. Now, we do play around the lines with that. We promote jobs that we get at headquarters in leads. Sometimes we tweet them. We share them via social media. But to have a separate job bank online would break our contract. So it's an all or nothing with Boxwood. We also don't have the authority to lower rates below a certain threshold, and they're as low as they can go now. So we don't have the authority to lower rates either. And the reality is, you could post a job on Journalism Jobs for $75. To post a job on our website, it's $200. So that's what we're competing against. And I'd like to add one more detail that just developed last week. The ONA, Online News Association, just launched a job board and a career center. So I got really excited because I wanted to go see what they're doing, thinking maybe we could have some ideas. They're using Boxwood.
They heard you got 14 grand for posting.
They probably did. So I'll be really curious to see how many people are posting jobs on their website compared to ours if we continue with Boxwood. And I think that will really tell us if the issue is the job bank or if the issue is that people just aren't interested in advertising to our membership.
Dana and Sonny.
The freelance community has a jobs board, and I don't know exactly how it works, but I know that people can log in and they can post that they have a job, but there's also a feed that comes through journalism jobs. Do you know how that works?
I do not.
Or if we pay for that?
I know we don't pay for that, so I doubt the community does.
Okay, so, well, no, I'm sure they don't, if you don't, but maybe Billy can explain that. So that's not violating our agreement then?
No.
Sonny?
Is the contract renewed annually, or do we have a?
It's evergreen. It renews annually until I tell it to stop.
Patty? Then John?
Do we know if there's any financial benefit to the idea of a partnership with journalismjobs.com?
I have not looked into that yet. I thought it would make most sense to let this board discuss it before I went down that road.
John?
I'd like to point out another financial implication. We've always talked about this is getting paid $14K essentially not to do a job bank, which is kind of weird. But there is a cost to not doing. There is a cost to not doing a job bank or some sort of thing that this contract doesn't let us do. I looked at our membership numbers this year, and this is one of those things that would not just benefit younger journalists, but all of us. Last year, our loss of professional members, if you add up 75 times the number of people, I don't remember what it is offhand, but I remember the dollar amount was $11,400 in 1 year. Now, I'm not saying that if those people had found a job through an SPJ benefit job bank that they would have stuck with us. But I'm convinced that every year that we don't have a viable sense of providing jobs to our members and providing job information, we lose members and we lose money. So that's my 2 cents.
Go ahead, Rebecca, then Joe.
If we decided to chuck this, what we have now, is it possible that SPJ could be sort of a repository of existing job banks? For example, journalismjobs.com is a job bank. Gorkana is a job bank. There's other ones. Is it possible for SPJ to pull all of those on its site and be the place to go? So you don't have to go to Journalism Jobs or Gorkana or this site or that site. Go to one site, you go to SPJ. If you're a member, it's one-stop shopping. Is that a possibility?
Maybe. Good idea. Joe?
I think what Rebecca is referring to is just a list of links, like a career center would be here's where you can go. I think that's certainly doable to answer her question. How do we monetize that? If we monetize it at all, I think that would just be ad sales on that page, but that's just the top of my head. A couple of things I've always struggled with is I don't like the job bank that we have from the standpoint of I don't like that there's only 5 jobs in there. So I'm always stuck in this situation of is my job as executive director to bring in $14,000 or have a viable job bank? And I will tell you I'm right on the fence on it. The realities, though, are this, and this is what I always come back to. If we have a job bank that's not Boxwood and we give it away for free, how many people are actually hiring? Like how many jobs are going to be posted anywhere anyway? And then secondly, it's incredible. We used to do our own. SPJ used to do our own. It's incredibly labor intensive to go out, get the ads, promote it. Then when they come in, upload them, put them in, or have somebody build something that people enter their own stuff. So either way you go, managing and maintaining a job bank in our history was very labor intensive. So those are the reasons I always say it's not worth it. We'll take the $14,000. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
But 5 jobs, that's embarrassing to
Agreed.
us. That's just awful. I mean, the Headline Club and the Illinois News Broadcasters Association do a joint job file. It has easily 200 jobs week after week.
Okay, we'll go Andy, Brett, and Dean.
Susan kind of led into where I was going to go, is that we already do have job banks within SPJ. Certain chapters are doing it. Chicago's doing it. I think Long Island's doing it. We should be figuring out how to promote that.
Yeah.
The optic, to use a buzzword, would be really bad that SPJ is just telling all of his members we're handcuffed because we need $14,000. We are going to do nothing to promote job search except a few little tweaky things. I think we need to get past that. When people who are just starting to get involved in SPJ, when there's a candidate running for office saying, hey, I know what SPJ can do, we can help people get jobs, and you're supposed to tell them, oh, sorry, we can't, we need money. We need to get past this idea that we're stuck in this situation. It's not good for us.
Yeah.
Brett and Patty?
Last year at one of our full chapter meetings, I asked, who has been on SPJ.org before? Crickets. Absolute crickets. And the next question they asked me was, well, what's there? And I was like, good point. Because there isn't much there to help guide someone who is just entering the field, I don't think, right now. And obviously that job bank is important. A lot of they also ask for internships. And I know there's a few of those on there too right now, but it's still not plentiful. So that's just something, feedback from them. They just said, you know, if I could get an internship even, you know, I want to go to California for an internship, I'm in Maryland, just having those links there would be very helpful.
I think a short-term solution might be just listing the links of all the affiliated, either within SPJ and exterior to SPJ, so long as we have authorization from those organizations. I think that's a very short-term fix that makes us look a little more viable for especially the student visitor. I agree, having 4 job listings makes us look really, really bad and like we're not serving members. It's going to take a long time to figure this out. But I think, Joe, when you think about your long-term strategy and this idea of partnering with a lot of different groups, I think we can, over time, come to some kind of solution and preserve the 14,000 for now, and yet put some more content on there that would make a trip to spj.org pay off for particularly a student visitor.
Joe?
Just a quick comment. I don't know that the contract prohibits us from having a page that says Career Center with a link to our job bank and a link to everything else that may exist if we are not the one having the job bank. So I think what Patty is saying and what Rebecca said, we may actually be able to do that legally and do both. So I'd have to look at the contract in detail, but I think we probably can.
It would be the one-stop shop then. You know, we're not generating it, but we're linking.
Yeah, and the links could be preceded by Chicago area, Long Island.
Sure, absolutely.
So there's a geographical breakdown for the job
Okay,
seekers.
Matt and Sunny, then Michael.
2 points. One is a question. So $14,000 is coming in. Do we know what that's earmarked for, or what percentage of the budget that is? I mean, how much?
It's
in perspective.
It's a tiny percentage. Our budget's $1.6 million, so $14,000 would be less than 1, I think. And it's not earmarked for anything specific. It goes into the general unrestricted operating fund, which is key for us. Unrestricted money for a C6 is the golden goose.
So how much money is in that fund?
It fluctuates because that's like a checking account. So the $14,000 comes into our checking account, and then it just goes into the overall budget.
Sure. Second point, though, I wanted to make is this is kind of like Craigslist all over again, right? I mean, young kids aren't going to come to SPJ for a job listing. They're going to go to journalism jobs. You know, does SPJ want to have a foot in that kind of venue? Sure, we should. But I think a link page is a great idea. That's what I was going to suggest. Do we lose the revenue by doing that? Sure, but it's better to be kind of all-inclusive and say, here's where you can go. You know, 5 links. You can cut it geographically. Just make it kind of user-friendly. The way we're doing it now doesn't sound like it helps at all. If there's only 3 journalism jobs posted. So I think these suggestions are good, and I think a page of links.
Absolutely, and I think there's a lot of job sites, companies have job sites that don't. Dow Jones has a job site. My company, ALM, American Lawyer Media, has a job site with jobs in DC and California and New York. I mean, these are the ones the kids aren't going to think to go to because they are sort of niche or they're not the all-inclusive like the Wakana and the journalism jobs. And if we can provide those links that they're not going to know about, I think that raises the profile. Hey man, SPJ's website, that's the way to go.
Okay, Sunny was next, but we don't have a motion on the table.
That's what I was going to ask.
Anyone want to
Motion.
make the motion?
What should the motion be?
Right. Trying to focus this conversation a little. Zero in here towards something.
I would move that headquarters staff continue to investigate the up and downside of continuing the current model while also setting up a links page on the spj.org website to provide job search options for our visitors. That was really wordy.
I'll second. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to do what?
I have moved that staff investigate the pros and cons of continuing the current model while setting up a page of links on the website to provide job site options for members.
Okay.
My thing is just, I mean, how, if we lose $14,000, what's the impact? I mean, is it a hit we can take, or is it a hit we can't take? That's what I want to know.
Patty,
Let me address that first.
Yeah.
What I'm proposing really is that we preserve the 14,000 for the time being, and that part of the investigation here is making sure we're not violating our contract with Foxwood, is that called?
Correct.
By having a links page.
David?
Yeah, let me just point out something. And I was doing some research for a story I was working on this. The average success rate of these job boards, these wide open job boards like this, is only 14%. So you're actually going to get a more effective turnover with that kind of regional that we were talking about, where we actually have that connection that SPJ has with these chapters. Sometimes connecting with these larger national job boards does not turn it over.
All right, Michael?
Has anyone seconded the motion?
Yeah, Sonny did.
Okay, there's gotta be a way that we can have this discussion about John's committee without, trying to give away money. Maybe if we add a fourth year, if we get rid of 14 grand. Can I suggest, as I'm gonna direct Joe to look into this, that the purpose of this committee was to keep younger members? I can tell you as a hiring editor, when I hire an entry-level person, I don't want to spend any money on marketing because it's such a huge percentage of the pay that I'm going to be paying somebody. I don't want to go on journalism jobs. I want to find one niche place where I can find entry-level people. If I'd be willing to do this, working with John, and if everyone else on this committee or on this board is interested, that we sit down with John, we try to create SPJjobs.com, whatever, something separate even, where we just list entry-level jobs. Because don't forget, this whole conversation is pegged to his committee. So we talk about a job board for everybody. Maybe the place to start is just entry-level journalism jobs place. There are more of those jobs around anyway. And that's how we try to support this committee. We can do that outside of this, or we can report back to it.
Okay, Tony?
What about offering a spot for college graduates to place their resumes on SPJ's website where employers can come and look, looking for entry-level jobs, could have some sort of private access to what the entries.
Like a resume bank.
Yeah, a resume bank could be. In addition to that, so that there could be two ways.
Well, I guess what I'm hearing is there are a lot of great ideas in this room, and I think there are probably 73 other great ideas that we can come up with. And I hear Michael volunteering to help in this process of figuring out what might make sense. So I guess what I'm hearing is basically the motion is to go study it and figure things out, however we want to do it.
Can I make a friendly amendment to that motion? That anybody on this, that this is now at the board level, to use her report, that this board appoint a subcommittee to work with that committee and come back with concrete ideas, talk to HQ. When we come back, we'll have real numbers and real proposals. And I volunteer to be on the committee if anyone wants to serve with me. If they don't, then I volunteer to move myself.
So that's basically where we're at in this motion. I think we'll just go ahead and go to a vote. All those in favor say.
I'm confused as to
what the motion.
Yeah, what the motion is.
Well,
It's kind of
Michael
more
has
confusing.
amended it,
If you
what's your
accept it.
actual amendment?
That this board appoint a subcommittee, investigate all the ideas heard here today, and by the next board meeting, we'll have conspired with HQ and actually put real numbers and real suggestions together so that you guys have something real to stick to.
I accept that.
So they'll come back in April then with concrete stuff. And if anybody wants to help out in the effort, I'm sure John and Michael and others will welcome your help.
Yes.
A lot of good ideas. Okay, Andy?
Does that mean that nothing will change before April?
Was it gonna anyway?
Well,
put up listings of like links to Chicago?
I mean, Joe, we could probably do that, right? That's just a staff thing, or?
You have to investigate.
I'd have to talk to Billy to find out if we even have a page where that would go now, and if not, then we have to create a page. And it always sounds easy to say, can't we just put up links? It's not always so easy to put up links when it makes sense. We really want them to work. So,
Well, Andy,
and I'm not sure it's legal given our contract. That's the key.
You gotta do that
More of a-
first,
of a
yeah.
general question, will we continue to not have the link of jobs to SPJ other than the ones we pay for?
I'm not sure we have an answer to that.
You want to be on the subcommittee?
All right. Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. Well, what do you know? We've decided to keep discussing something. That never happens.
Should we start writing the agenda for March?
Start the agenda for spring. All right, good stuff. No, I think that's really positive. And John, again, thank you and everybody who helped on some great ideas, and keep them coming, because that's the only way we're going to get better. Instead of going to the advocacy fund next, I'd like to go ahead and do two things ahead of it. Let's do the minutes real fast. Approval of the board meeting minutes. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at them, but I guess we need a motion to approve.
Was Lawn Guy's corrections?
With what?
Was it Lawn Guy who
Oh,
sent the
Andy.
corrections?
Andy had corrections for
Yeah.
the minutes.
Yeah.
Sure, I have been blogging about the process and critiquing each step along the way. I think that some of the recommendations I've made have reached the committee.
We're talking about the minutes.
Yeah, just the minutes.
What's that?
We're talking about
Yeah.
the minutes.
I applaud you on all the other
I'm
things
sorry,
too,
sorry
but
about that.
No, it's
but
okay.
you were very
been blogging
precise
and
with
critiquing
some
all of
minutes
Yes, I
corrections.
sent around some corrections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did have two things that I wanted to bring up about it, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I wanted to just ask about the conference call that we had on appointments, and elections, student rep. We had a pretty lively discussion about this, the Region 11 director. I just boiled down to one sentence. But my question is, do we consider this to be a private discussion, like executive session? Okay.
We did. And typically, I think most open meeting laws allow for discussion of candidates to be an executive session, but the vote's in public. And I think we're just following typical, the way open meeting laws are generally set up, even though we're not subject to them. I think that spirit of following those, in that case, that would be executive session.
Personnel and real estate are behind closed doors.
Okay, do we usually make a motion to go into executive session when we do that?
You generally would, yeah. I'm not sure if we did on that call or not. Did we? I think we did. I remember, I think, but maybe.
I believe we did because we discussed if there were outside people calling in, how we would handle that because they could be on only for that brief period and then we're like, okay, we're going into executive session. Bye.
Jim?
No, I was just going to ask,
Oh,
can you take
right.
a quick break?
Yeah.
Thank you. So I just want everybody to meet our two newest kind of new employees, the triumvirate here. So Taylor, raise your hand. This is Taylor. She's the communications coordinator, the intern that we hire each year. And Abby Martzall is our new awards coordinator. So this is the board, and this is the rest of your team that we just hired. I asked them to pop in really quick, but then they have to leave and do work. So,
Okay.
Welcome.
Welcome. Welcome.
thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, okay. Dana, still talking about the meeting minutes here.
So we were talking about the minutes and I think Susan
You don't
brought
have
up
to work.
the point to accept Andy's line edits. And I just want to make a comment about about the line edits. I don't have any objection to the line edits to the minutes. I think that's fair and appropriate, but a lot of the other line edits were committee reports, and I don't think we have the authority to necessarily update those or that we need to. I think it's okay for the minutes, because
Yeah.
those are an official formal record.
Yeah,
I
Dana's
thought they were
right.
considered part
Yeah.
of the minutes.
No, they're just part of the board packet.
Right. That's probably a good point.
Maybe like editing the New York Times story that you inserted.
I'll do that.
Joe?
I have just a point of clarification for staff. And this is because we were trained the way we were trained and we know what we know. And one of Andy's comments was about the Region 11 that he had made a motion for somebody, but it's not in the minutes. And the reason I didn't put it in the minutes is because there was no second. So I was trained, there's no second, it's not really a full motion. And here's the big key for us. When we do minutes, we have always approached it very simply. And we messed them up. I'm not saying we didn't make mistakes on these. Is that you capture the essence and the action.
Yeah, helps, because you can go to the minutes and see what the main topics were, and then go to the meeting.
So no, I'm trying to think about the average person. We're trying to include all members who I know most of them don't want to do this, but if they have an inkling, what is the board up to? They don't want to look at the replay, they want to see a summary. I think we should summarize the minutes as if nobody was going to do anything else, try to gather information.
Say the same thing. Bill?
I'd just like to say, I think for journalism group to have a list of minutes that aren't a copy of it is wrong.
Right.
Good point. We should have them edited. All right.
Andy, I'll send them to you before I send them to the board. Good? All right.
All right.
That's what we did at DC.
So can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
It's the longest minutes discussion we've ever had in a meeting. Any other discussion about the minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. Well, good discussion, Andy. I mean, I think this is important. Let's go ahead and hear from the SDX Foundation president. Robert, are you ready?
I was born ready.
All right. Oh, yeah.
Well, my report to both boards is in the packet. But pretty much what I would say is we still have plenty of money. We're still giving it away. We're continuing the conversation on taking on the educational programming. That'll be one of the main points of our agenda on Saturday. I think it's when we're on a couple times. So I'm hoping that we can have some action there, but that would be the pleasure of the board. On Saturday evening, we will handling and are also on the agenda. I just heard it for president, you can select them on the agenda. But I think there was at our meeting in April, there was an interest in doing it. There were just details that people wanted to discuss and look into. And so there'll be a lot of kicking the tires on Saturday. But I would certainly hope that if there's enough support for the next fiscal year, we can be in that way. I mean, it just makes sense for us to be doing the education just directly and leaving SPJ to do the advocacy, which is the next item on your agenda.
It is. Michael and Patty, or Patty then Michael.
So in terms of the process, on Saturday, you'll continue to talk about taking on the educational tasks.
Right.
Does that issue then come back to this board at our spring meeting, or?
Last spring, you said let's do it yesterday. So I think you all have already decided.
Okay. What would be an appropriate way to weigh in? Just to you directly via email?
Yeah. Or if you want to come by Saturday morning and say something during the board meeting. I mean, us, what do you call us, Michael? Us old guys, graybeards, whatever. I mean, we occasionally.
Roman censors.
Huh?
Roman censors.
Thank you. We occasionally send up at your meetings, and I certainly recognize it.
What time?
9 to noon.
Thanks for the
I'll
invite.
tell you, Patty.
I have a session,
Yeah.
but I'll
Okay.
share.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Michael?
Point of procedure, we should come back to this board with May talk about material changes, the initial proposal, right?
Yeah, I suspect, Robert and Joe, that if there are things that evolve that affect SPJ, we need to discuss that. Okay. Any other questions, Robert? Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate it. All right, well, let's go to the advocacy fund here, and then we'll take a brief break. I sent around earlier this week the latest updated proposal based on the questions that we heard in Indy, and we looked into it, talked to the accountants, talked to the attorneys, that sort of thing. Actually, even this week, I kind of modified something a little. I talked about in the memo shifting, I think, 100,000 into this, and I think we're thinking more maybe just half and half, 75, 75. 75,000 in the checking account feels a little safer than 50. So my proposal is to actually do that instead of the other thing. So did everybody have a chance to read it, I hope?
I'd like to review it again on this thing, but I'm not seeing it in the packet.
No, it's an email he sent, so.
I emailed. And basically what I'm recommending is three things: that we approve the concept of an endowed legal defense fund, of an endowed fund for LDF. We don't necessarily have to create it right now. I'm recommending we create it in a couple years. Just so if we change our minds, we can. Because once you create an endowed fund, it's pretty much stuck. And so I'm recommending 2 years from now, we go ahead and set it up legally, assuming that things are the same by then. I think that makes sense. Two, that when that time comes, and we can start it now, actually, we allocate 75,000 of the existing 150,000 toward this savings account that will bear interest, and that interest will go in the checking account to be spent for advocacy. And the general policy that we put excess funds at the end of the year into this endowment. Those are my three ideas. And of course, the board can, and SPJ can decide at the end of the year if we need to buy equipment, whatever, to spend whatever's needed on whatever makes sense for SPJ. But just the idea, if we do have extra, throw it in this endowment. Right. So that's my proposal that I'm pitching out. Yes, ma'am.
On the last page where it says start now, 1, 2, 3, approve the endowed LDF forever account. Is that what you're saying in 2 years?
Yeah.
You do?
approve the idea now?
Well, we approve the idea now, so that we can start raising money. And, so it is created now. We just haven't legally shifted it to where it can't be taken back out. And in a way, we kind of have that with SDX. And the SDX money, right? It's not endowed, but.
Very little of the SDX money is actually officially restricted.
Right, right. But we kind of treat it as endowed. You know, it's just not legally endowed. Yes, Mike?
Two quick questions. One, if you put $75,000 in the slot box, is it impossible to get back out? Do you get a penalty? What's the rules for that?
Nothing physically really changes. It's how we keep track of what the money that's in that account. The key here is not so much if we put it in a lockbox or whatever, it's how you ask people to donate. If I were to ask you to donate to our endowment and you said yes, your money is immediately restricted because for whatever we told you we're giving it to. So we have to be very careful as we're asking for money until this official endowment is actually set up. But in the next 2 years, if we just say we want to really build up a war chest, so we'll have money forever, and they say we'd like to support that, it's not restricted. So we could get it if we need to.
So if we set aside $75,000, we get $10,000. That $10,000 is restricted, but the original 75 we can still move.
Correct.
So Dave, what is then your issue with setting aside $100,000 and $50,000 in the checking account if it's not really restricted? Because you would said in your email, or I don't know if it was in the report, or maybe it was at the exec, that $100,000 is a nice round number that people get excited about.
Yeah, I mean, because now, Joe, if we take that money and put it in an endowment, it is restricted, right?
It's board designated, and therefore it's not permanently restricted. But any money that comes in from others is permanently restricted.
Okay.
But the idea, I will say this, in the stuff that I've read, researched about endowments and matching funds and all that, you're better off putting money in there that you are confident you will never touch again, because you don't want to create the habit of feeling comfortable moving money out of your savings account to pay for little bills here and there. But that's the LDF. It's not like we're going to have a $500 expense come through very often. So.
Okay, I'm sorry, a lot of questions. When was the last time, there's reference in your email, but I don't remember the year. When was the last time that we spent $50,000 out of the LDF in 1 year?
It would have been around 2006, 2007. It was the Chicago convention. That's what I remember. So 2006, I think.
6.
Yeah.
But that was actually, Lori said it was 30,000, right? 30,000 for Josh Wolf?
I don't remember what we actually spent out of there. The number I always remember is 50, but.
Well, I thought it was 80, and then Lori said it was 30.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't think it was 80. You know, I seem to recall 30 or 50.
And Lori recommended, she liked 100 being available because, of course, she's the attorney and gets paid. Sorry, Lori. You know, I think she was fine with 50. I mean, she doesn't anticipate any big case tapping more than 50,000 from us. I don't think we would pay more than 50. We would be part of probably a cause. We would chip in a lot. I don't think there would be a scenario where we'd fund the whole thing anyway. But she said cases could cost several hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending how high you go up.
So you want a motion to create the fund but not fund it yet, so that we create it here today, and we're announcing that we're going to fund it in 2 years? Or what would we announce?
The motion would be to create it today. That we now have this forever fund starting today.
No money in it.
No, that we have that we're gathering money and that we will dedicate part of our LDF toward it.
But we're not doing it yet.
The fund will be created as of if we approve it today, right, Joe?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah. It's just technically we don't legally create the endowed portion for a couple of years.
Can I just suggest that, like, if we're going to do something, let's just do it, and if we're not going to do it, then let's not do it. It just seems like a weird idea. I don't really relish the idea of walking around this convention saying, so you created this thing? Well, we created it, but I got no money in it. Which means I can't really donate it to it yet, or I can.
Well, no, it'll be there. The money's there, right? We will create it if we decide to create it today.
I'm confused with
So why wait, I guess?
Well, it's only, I mean, I heard people feeling in Indy a little like, well, if we put it in the lockbox, you know, we can't get it back, although Joe's saying we can't. So, so maybe it makes sense just to go ahead and create it.
We can't put new money, we cannot take back new money.
New money.
Right, whatever we raise, we cannot take out of the
We
lockbox.
can take the LDF.
But here was the reason, if we raise the money from the outside and we don't tell them it's endowed, we tell them it's a gift for our war chest that we want to raise our LDF fund, that is unrestricted to the LDF fund. So if this doesn't fly in 2 years and we really don't gain any traction, we could still have that money for the LDF's use. But if they've given it to us under the idea that there is an endowed fund and in 3 years this thing never takes legs, we have a pot of money we can't use for anything.
I thought we could use it for legal offense money.
If you tell them it's an endowed money, their money is restricted. You cannot spend the principal.
Only the interest.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Becky and Pat.
One of the things that I think we have to keep in mind, Michael, is that it takes a while for things like this to get traction so that people will actually be making the donations. You know, any PR campaign that requires people to open their wallets and give money, you'll get a big push at the beginning, and then all of a sudden it'll filter back, and you've got to find a way of keeping it going. So that 2 years to me is very reasonable, and trying to get people to get this into their mindset to where they want to make the donations.
Patty, then Kim.
So a couple of points of information. In your cover note to your memo on this, you did say that 80,000 was given to the Josh Wolf case back in whatever.
Right, that was an error.
That was an error?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other
Lori corrected.
the other thing I think that we're talking about here is Joe talking about, we'll just put this money aside, we'll call it this for a while. You've got a bullet point that says if the board is supportive legally, we could then put it into endowment in 2016. This gives us a little grace period if we have buyer's remorse. So why would we wait a full 2 years from now to make that move? Is that just being prudent?
I heard that concern in Indy, so I put it in there. My preference is just to do it now.
I concur with that. Before I lose the floor, my last point would be building on what Becky said. If this is really going to take off the way we would like it to, and everybody goes, wow, great idea, we really do have to think about how we're going to market it. There has to be like a launch date and a big push and some big publicity behind it. And that can't happen, if we decide to fund it right now, it's kind of like a quiet launch. And then I think we need to actually have a planned marketing campaign to get members behind it and start, putting some money towards it.
Kim, then Carl, then David.
So my question is, when it's in an endowment, I know we talked about not being able to be touched, but that's because you have a memo of understanding about the money, right? Isn't there a way to go back to the donor and say, we've stopped this, so we're going to do a new memo? I mean, we do that at the university. And we want to change this, and donors approve the change.
You can.
And
You can.
But what if the donor dies?
Not that you want to do that, but.
If the donor dies, you have to find a family member, and if you can't find a family member, then you have to go to court. If it's a $10 donation, we'd have to track who those individuals are and then go back to them and ask for their $10.
Yeah, not that you would want to do that.
Correct.
Small things.
Correct.
So, but if the foundation gives you $100,000, the foundation is still there. You go back to them and say, this didn't work out. We'd like to have unrestricted access to the funds, and
Yes.
then they have to decide whether they want it back.
Correct.
Carl?
So as far as I understand it right now, we want to create this fund, but we want to wait a couple of years. Yeah, I'm still not. Now, I wasn't at Indianapolis. I apologize for that, but that was the one. I'm sorry. Please be quiet. So we want to create this fund, but we kind of want to wait 2 years to see if we get some momentum built toward it, so that we know that there's actually some interest. Which I can see.
Well, let me clarify, Carl. The 2-year thing was only because some people expressed in Indy that if we set aside this money and it's in a lockbox, that's the term that gets thrown around, we can't get it back.
I just think of Al Gore.
Yeah, I know. I'm about as exciting as him, too. So, yeah, that people would feel like, oh, gee, you know, we can't, what if we change our mind? So that's why I put that in here. Personally, I think we should just do it now. And if the board's happy with that, it's great. And as Joe clarified, that 75 we put into it now, we could technically pull back. We couldn't pull back any donations we get toward, you know, ad from people. We go collect, and we can start this now. And so, I mean, that's my preference.
Yeah, and sorry, so I would agree with that, but I would say that it has to go along with what you're saying with some sort of marketing plan.
Okay. David and Michael?
I think this 2-year thing is confusing a lot of folks. We're either gonna go forward with this or not. And it sounds like everybody's in agreement with it, that it sounds logical and rational. So I would suggest in a motion, we take this 2-year element out of it, because it seems like we just go forward with it.
There's my motion.
Forget about it.
Be nice to have a motion.
I make the motion.
Awesome.
And can I speak even if I say the motion? Because I agree with Dave, I agree with Carl, I agree with Patty. We have a new communication person on board. Obviously, we need to promote the hell of it, but here's my urgency. One is you volunteered at the last meeting to kick in your own money for that. That's a great marketing ploy. I think that's going to be great. Two, according to Dana, you're going to be helping out doing FOI stuff still. So the timing is good. In 2 years, you might be totally sick of this whole thing. So your involvement after you're president, this is a great thing to hang your hat on. And three, I would like for once on this board to make a mistake of commission rather than omission. So I'd rather vote for something and then have the next board say, you guys really jumped the gun on that. It's a really bad idea, because that would be awesome.
And Dave Colgate donates $10,000.
Right. Well, I mean, a big part of this is the legacy gifts. And, you know, I pledged when I'm dead to give a bunch of money to it, because I won't need it. So yeah, and that's long term. I mean, my goal is to work on this for, you know, as long as I am alive.
You're the best spokesman for this thing there is. Capitalize on
Yeah.
it now.
And we're working on partnerships with other organizations. There'll be a leader summit here tomorrow, where a bunch of presidents and directors from various organizations will be getting together, and I'm going to be bringing this up, trying to get buy-in from all sorts of journalism organizations, talking with NFOIC to work out how their litigation fund we can help with and offset our LDF. There's a lot of things in the works behind in the background that I'm working on. And you know, as a school director, I do fundraising all the time, and I kind of like it because it's for a good cause. You know, it's for making the world better. So yeah, and I'll be doing FOI stuff this year, just for a year.
That's all right, I don't care after that.
That's
I mean, I do, but.
And this will be part of that. So do you want to make a motion, Mike?
I just did, but no one seconded.
Second.
What's the motion?
So what's the motion?
Motion is to fund this now with $75,000 from the current LDF account. And I will add that charge Dave Collier with being in charge of it after this, and that we gladly accept the money instead.
I'm not sure if I have to be in charge of it.
I think
Sure, what happened in
you did a good job last meeting.
Yeah.
You are
Clean up
perfect.
those
This,
minutes.
if anything's going to succeed, it doesn't succeed on motions and
It's your
bylaws. It
vision.
succeeds on personalities. You got the personality to do this. You got to be the guy. You got to start now.
Point of information for Michael's motion, because Dave has made 3 proposals here. Your motion incorporates 2 of them.
Yes.
The first 2, is that
Yes.
your point?
Thank you.
So he left out the part about throwing in extra in each test fund.
Yes, I did.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I'm sorry, what was omitted?
Number 3.
The approve a general policy where we throw in the extra money at the end of the year into the fund.
Can I explain my motion? I think we should pass what we can pass without spending hours talking about it. I don't think this board should encumber future boards. This board wants to give money later to this. I think they will and shall, but I'd rather just get this thing going as cleanly as possible with Dave leading the charge.
Well, Dave, do you accept that?
Well, it's not for me to accept or not, it's the motion. I mean, I think it's a general, I mean, I would want a general policy board money. It's one way to get this thing built, if we, in good years, when we have, you know, extra money that, of course, some of it maybe we might want to spend on other things, but I mean, I would prefer to have the extra going to the fund and build it up as fast as possible.
If the board supports that, someone wants to make a friendly motion.
I don't
know. Accept it.
But it's up to the board, and the board can change it every year. It's not like the board's locked in. Dana?
I have a question. So the finance committee each spring, the day before the board meeting, meets and they go through the budget that Jake and Joe have prepared. Would that be an appropriate time for the board to decide each year when they adopt the budget, that this year we decide X is going to go into it? Because we don't know excess funds at the time we're approving the budget.
The most appropriate time is to get together and decide when the year end is closed. And then July 31st. And then we determine how much cash do we need to get us through till the next big payday, which is awards for us. So determining that balance of how much cash do we need to get us there, what's excess, what projects do we have, then there will be a dollar amount. But the best time to do it, and it's nothing we do now. So it'd be something brand new. But the best time to do it is the end of the year.
The budget would not work.
No,
Gotcha.
no, because by then we're 6 months through the current year almost.
All right. Thank you.
Paul, would the appropriate time to come up with the annual contribution to the, what do you call it, LDF Forever Fund? Would that be this meeting, the end of, because basically this ends a board year, the first meeting at convention?
We can never close our books usually until October, because even though the fiscal year ends July, we still get all of our bills from all of our people, or people who make our awards or whatever, and those often don't come till the end of August because it's a 30-day thing, and so we don't even know what our complete expenses are for the prior fiscal year till September, early September. Then we have to actually do the accounting to close the books, so it's not feasible.
So the books are not closed yet.
They won't be closed until I get back and can dedicate more time to them.
And you wouldn't have a sense of what would be a reasonable figure?
No. I cannot tell you now how we finish the fiscal year, even though it's been 2 months, month and a half.
All right. And Joe, how do you feel about that idea?
I think it's a good idea. I mean, we have a $500,000 reserve now. You know, we worked really hard and we built that up over the past several years. We have a rainy day fund. If part of this is we'll see what we need at the end of the year. And let's just say it's the finance committee or whatever the body is. They look at the numbers. We determine how much cash we need to get us through the next phase. We determine what major projects are on the table, which will often come out of this meeting, you know. And then we say, here's the chunk of money left over. I mean, my question would be, what else are we going to do with it? Keep putting it in a bigger rainy day fund so we go from 500 to 530, from 500 to 540, or if we already decide we need to spend money on, I don't know, technology or a new building or cars for board members, whatever this group decides. Right. Once the group decides, once the board decides and there's excess money, why not put it in something that is at the heart of the organization's mission? To me, it just makes total sense that's what we would do.
I'd like to make it in a friendly motion to include amending Michael's motion to include the excess funds into the new LDF fund.
Okay. Did Michael do that?
No.
He did not.
He specifically did not.
He did number 1 and number 2, but not number 3.
I thought he was going to add it.
And he said it was actually said it was the sense of the board.
Oh, okay.
I'm proposing an amendment to Michael's motion. Don't approve seconded.
We can go forward to it.
Okay, well,
we can amend it.
We can
Yeah.
amend it.
Just
So
won't be
is there a
friendly.
second to her amendment? A second, Tony seconds. So the amendment is to amend Michael's motion by saying we also, put the excess funds into this. Any discussion on the amendment? Andy?
I agree with Michael's idea of leaving it out. I'm not opposed to it, but I think that there seems to be a logistical trouble with trying to do this automatically in one process. But I'm okay if headquarters is part of bookkeeping procedures besides this fund has built up. Here's a suggestion for when to move it, and I can be done periodically at the discretion, a recommendation to the board.
Well, it sounds like, Joe, the way it worked is in October, you figure out, okay, this is what we ended up with. We ended up with $23,000 extra this year. So you just shove that into the LDF account, right?
You'd have no option.
Right.
Yeah, I'm like Michael, I'm hesitant to encumber a future board to say you've gotta do this. You know, in your original memo about it, you said establish a policy of putting excess funds. To me, the best this board could do is, you know, encourage future boards to move excess funds. But based on what Joe's saying, I would think future boards would have to have a meeting after the books are closed, like a conference Skype meeting or whatever, you know, to actually do it. I don't think it ought to be an automatic, let's just move any excess money over. I think future boards should have to consciously make a decision. You know, establishing a policy to do that, I think that would be within this board's purview, but I think future boards would have to take action.
I agree with Sonny in particular. Joe gave technology as an example. We need to make an investment in our technology. So we automatically move that money. Maybe that's money that we need to say, okay, next year we need to spend it for this. So I would agree with him. You know, and it would be great if we could put money into it every year, but I don't think we should lock future boards into it either.
I don't think legally you can.
Yeah, well, I don't think this would lock future boards. I don't think, you know.
The vague term here is excess.
Yeah.
Define excess.
What is that?
Yeah,
And
that
it would be
fine, but-
defined differently by every board every year what it considers excess.
Even if there's no excess.
Is there any limits on what the excess could be used for?
And what's been happening the past 5 years is we've had this excess every year. And Joe, on his own, just throws it in the rainy day fund. So, and he's just been growing the rainy day fund. Now we kind of have a rainy day fund that's big enough. Like the accountants, we have now we have a decision. We could set up a process so every year the board decides what to do with this money if we have excess every year, which we have for the past 5 years. I anticipate will continue because Joe's so awesome at managing money. So, you know, maybe the board wants to decide that every year. Is what I'm hearing. I don't know, Paul.
Let me throw out an idea because I'm a little troubled by the squishiness of the term excess and encumbering future boards. What if instead of that, would it make sense to have an allocated amount every year in the budget that's a sum certain that is donated or is set apart and goes into the LDF Forever Fund from our annual budget, whether it's 15, 20, 25, whatever amount it is. That would be something that would be part of the budgetary process. We decide that, the board approves that dollar figure. That board approves that dollar figure. A subsequent board could either totally strip it out or increase it or decrease it or whatever. But it would be something that future boards would be able to do, and we end up building up the fund.
Go Matt and Michael.
I like that idea. It sounds like the consensus is this is a good thing to spend money on. But like, we're all journalists. If the city council was trying to do this, that's the lead story the next day. If they're encumbering future boards, I think that's problematic for me. But to Paul's point, I think that if we all agree that this is a good thing, that we should encourage future boards to do this, why don't we make the amendment that we encourage or recommend boards to do it subject to annual board approval? So that there is a check in place in case that they don't want to do it. That might be a clean way to suggest this.
All right, Michael and Andy. And Michael, we have an amendment on the floor to add in the.
Otherwise, we'll be talking about this all this time. I second the new guy, and I think we're talking about something, we're spending a lot of time on something that isn't that big a deal. I think from a maybe our new communications person can attest to this, but if we didn't make it a rule, and then every year the board decided, hey, we're gonna spend $10,000 and put it in that LDF Forever Fund, that's a new press release, and that's awesome. We don't need a rule, we just do it, and then we tout it.
Which is possible. I'd come to the board every year, say, you know, throw this in there.
I imagine I'll get a call from Dave in October. How much money do we have left over,
Yeah.
Joe? Because I'd like to go to the board and tell them they need to put this into my fund.
Yeah. So that's another option.
Dave's fun.
And
No,
it's
it's
not
not
That's
a marketing
It's
tool.
not about me. This isn't about me. Andy.
I was just gonna suggest that we move ahead since we're at 11:30.
All the questions.
Or 10:20, but yeah.
Andy.
Sorry, your Wi-Fi on, so it knows where you are.
No, you're right, Andy. No, people are getting. So, all those in favor of ending debate, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's 2/3 vote. The motion on the amendment is to do the policy to throw the stuff in. All those in favor of that amendment, say aye.
I'm not clear on what that is. Say
Okay,
that again.
what was the amendment?
The amendment's to add your third part in. Right?
Yeah, the amendment is to have a policy where we put
Are you
excess.
amending my original motion?
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes,
you were out of the
my
room.
am- Yeah, I chose the
I have a
amendment.
small bladder, it's the size of a walnut. What am I supposed to do?
No, I know.
All right, so.
So it's not a friendly amendment, so we're voting on it,
Yeah.
Okay.
since you weren't here.
So maybe.
And it wouldn't have been a friendly amendment anyway, probably.
The amendment is to encumber the excess funds.
You want me to read it?
Yes.
Move to amend Koretzky's motion by creating a policy that would move excess funds at the end of the year into the endowment fund.
Yeah, that's the amendment.
That's what we're voting on.
That's what we're voting on, and we're not debating anymore, because we voted to end debate on that amendment. But then, once we vote on the amendment, we'll talk about the main motion, the whole motion. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, so I think the amendment failed. So now we have a motion on the floor by Michael to, yes?
Let's see, where's it at here? Move, launch the advocacy fund immediately, funding it with $75,000 from the current LDF account, and create a policy. Oh, sorry, that's it. Funding it with $75,000 from the current LDF fund and start it now.
So that's the motion. Further discussion on the motion.
Second.
Oh, it's already been seconded.
All right. I'll third.
Call for a vote.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Awesome.
Congratulations.
Right.
All right.
Point of information,
Yes.
you and I talked offline about the possibility of putting a press release out from Nashville. I think Patty said it might be better to establish a marketing plan and then go with it. I think probably ought to give some direction to Jennifer.
Well, Jennifer already wrote it.
Okay.
And,
It's ready to go.
It's ready to go.
And I think, yeah.
And I'm fine with like announcing it and press release and statement or whatever.
Me too. And then we're gonna have a big deal later.
I think we'll.
But just saying it's out there and it's done, you know, that's a
Just
short.
want to clarify, we just leave two different directions.
Yeah, but definitely now that we know where we're going, we can go whole hog on this javelina. All right, that's a wild pig in Tucson. So javelina.
Spelled with
All
a
right.
J.
Okay.
Oh, Razorbacks.
Thank y'all. Stink pigs in Texas.
Good question.
Carl.
So just on the point of getting the word out, aren't we allowed to actually note on Twitter that this actually was?
It's streaming live, so it's covered.
No, don't do
No
that.
secret.
That's what you said. I thought that was okay. Okay.
All right, so it's all out. I'm happy. Thank y'all. All right, moving on. Let's keep going here. Oh, a break. People want a 5-10 minute break?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. 10:30. Let's resume.
The men's room is at the end of this hall and turn left.
That's how he saves money. It's how he's budgeting.
Yeah.
SPJ's
I'll take a break. People may grab some more during the break.
entertainment and media in LA. Also do some freelance work in Los Angeles. Been a former board member of SPJ DC, and now involved as an active member of the LA chapter. So I'm glad to be here.
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Amy Liu. I'm one of the diversity fellows. I'm really happy to be here, and like Georgia said, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm currently the social media and community editor for a public television station called KCT, and we have a show called SoCal Connected, and that's the show I work for. And I am an active member of the SPJ LA chapter. I'm really interested in learning about diversity and how I can help build that realm in both national and local level. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Tina Chancellor. I'm the treasurer and vice president of the Western Washington Pro chapter. Pretty well-rounded in print through Village Voice, Baltimore Sun, and Seattle PI until close. And then after that, I got a pretty fast dip into digital, working for MSNBC.com. And now I'm a reporter for the Microsoft News Center. And again, thank you very much for this opportunity. It was my second SPJ conference, and I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Do y'all have any questions about us? Board members? Well, if you do, holler us. You know, folks are happy to talk, and you can stay if you like, or you can leave. You can leave and watch it streamed live as well. That's another option. So thank you for coming. Anybody else here you should recognize? Yes.
I'm one of the Harper Scholars this year, along with April Buffet. I'm an online producer at the Charlotte Observer. I'm also secretary of the Greater Charlotte chapter and the nominee for the diversity chair position. Thank you for letting us on.
And I'm Claudia Nashville. I'm a Harper Scholarship also recipient. I'm also the chair for Generation J. I'm currently a reporter, producer, social media manager for KCON, local city channel in Montana, California.
Awesome. And thank you, Sandra Gonzalez, for coordinating all this, our diversity committee.
Dave, I just want to say this is a very fun,
Coming from someplace else.
excellent group of journalists, and we've had a great time and just getting underway. So, really successful year.
Thanks for doing that, Sandra.
The
The NSA. Yeah. Their equipment's
They become less subtle.
All right, moving on to the agenda. SPJ Vision, number 8. You'll see in your packet the memo by Robert on SPJ, SPX thing. We kind of talked about that earlier. I don't think we have to continue talking about that, but if you have questions, and no doubt that'll come back to us probably in April or the spring. Staff, Tara, you want to talk about something or other? I don't know this Nebraska thing is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So we talked with the executive committee in June in DC about a new concept. It's all in your memo, so I won't go over it, but brief high-level highlights are that chapters, some are great, some are struggling, but we really want to think of SPJ as a buffet where we have something to kind of offer everyone, all facets. And so what we found in some areas, it may be because they're sparsely populated, it may be because it's a mix of students and pros, every situation is different. But in those areas, it's not really feasible for them to have a chapter. It's difficult for them to get a board together, to put in the work of filing 990s and annual reports, but they still want to do great journalism stuff. And so that's where we've kind of tried to put together a concept that would allow them to do that. So basically, this concept allows for people to function as a group, not as an official chapter, where we have boots on the ground somewhere and they can do great journalism programming, meetups, whatever it is that suits them in their specific area. They would not get things that chapters get, so they wouldn't have delegates, things like that. Like I said, it's all specific there, so I'm open to questions if anybody has any. Nebraska is our guinea pig group right now. They have tried for several months, probably almost a year, to kind of get a board under them, to get programming going, to get enough people to make them have a sustainable chapter. And it's been a struggle, but not for lack of passion. They're a really encouraging group, and so we floated this idea by them. They like it. We're going to see what happens, and I'm going to meet with Rob to talk with him briefly about that this weekend too. So, open to questions if anybody has any.
David?
Yeah, let me supplement on that for Region 7. They have a very strong Omaha Press Club, and that has been kind of a bit of a conflict. So they're trying to have more interaction with that group so they can get kind of a cross-membership, cross-activity going. And so far, it seems to be generating some interest. So that's why this whole idea of a non-chapter was getting started, because then they're thinking that with more of the activity with University of Nebraska and with this press club, that within about a year they'll probably generate a lot more traction.
Great. Michael, then Carl.
So, Carol, what prevents us from doing this anywhere as opposed to doing this?
Nothing. It's new. We wanted to float the idea and kind of run it with a group that we knew had several people with boots on the ground as opposed to just one. And so Nebraska was it at the moment. One thing to remember is that these groups within the centralized chapter don't hold their own funds. So they don't have an account like a chapter does, therefore don't have a treasurer, don't hold money that SPJ then has to track down and help ask for best practices for finances and things like that.
How would you see this progressing if we were to be successful in this one area? How would you be able to handle this across multiple geographies?
So I think this is like a lot of things that we do in that we're going to try it. We think it's a great idea. If we have 75 people who want to have boots on the ground groups and it becomes too much for me or staff to handle, that's a good problem to have. That means we have 75 more SPJ facets out there. Ideally, that's a great problem, but we're not there yet. So,
to answer Carl's question and address Tara's issue, the RDs met this morning to talk about kind of Joe's vision about what happens when we de-emphasize chapters. Tara talked about giving some of the money to the RDs to help do stuff for our members who aren't in chapters. It sounds like it would dovetail perfectly with what RDs can do to help instead of just have headquarters do all of it. That maybe this becomes something that the RDs handle with Tara.
Kim?
Or how would the money work? So would they still be able to take in money for an event, say, and then spend it?
yeah. So basically, and this kind of talks a little bit about it, what membership associations are really seeing is kind of them pulling their chapters kind of back under their wings. So that's kind of why it's the centralized concept, where we would essentially kind of be the management arm for that. So if they do have an event where there's registration process and things like that, that money would go back through headquarters. They don't have to manage that, they don't have to, but then they don't get that money. So while it's great for chapters who have the ability to raise those funds and spend it as they see fit, you know, these groups essentially are not having those funds. So headquarters is managing those.
So it's not so much managed like a regular pro chapter would be or something like that.
Correct, it is not.
I think it's maybe unfair for these boots on the ground people to have a good program and raise a little money and then not get to keep the money.
I can answer that. We would also spend the money on them. Essentially, we would be their treasurer. So they would raise the money would come to headquarters. We would have it earmarked. We haven't decided yet, and this is part of the learning process, if it's earmarked for each individual group or if it's earmarked for all of them, and we have a big pot of money that we dole out whenever they need expenses paid. But these groups won't need money to do anything other than to put on programs. So they have an idea, they have a program, they work with Tara. We agree that it's a good program. They set it up. We pay the bills. Any money that comes in goes back to headquarters. So it's money in, money out, all for these groups, and it's earmarked for that.
One of the things to remember is that after a group has a program, they may never have another program there again. That may be it. And so hopefully that program reached several people who are interested in SPJ, and they've now created warm fuzzies. But giving the money back to them to maybe, or maybe not, have another program again doesn't make sense. If they do, great, then we're ready for them. But that's kind of the idea there.
Michael? Can't give the money back to them, because where they're gonna put it, then they're back in the tax situation. If the RDs get some money, as we discussed this morning, to go do programming anywhere we want to, that RD can decide to go do that program in that area. It should work.
All right. Thank you, Tara. Sounds great. Let's give it a shot. All right. Joe, your vision.
Yes, kind of. So I just wanted to provide some brief updates on the advocacy efforts. And so this whole notion of the board asked in April if I could have something on the agenda every meeting to update how the vision is taking shape. So a few points. Dave already mentioned there's a big leadership summit that's taking place tomorrow. It's a 4-hour meeting, I think, with presidents and executive directors from, I think, 20 different journalism associations-ish, 15, 20, something like that. And of course, I'm going to be talking about the back office management options that SPJ can provide to them. Dave, of course, is going to talk about let's join forces and do more advocacy together. And also updating kind of that whole notion, thanks to Catherine Foxhall, who's sitting over here under the picture. Raise your hand, Catherine, who spearheaded, I think you're all aware, we recently joined, I don't know, 40 other journalism associations in a letter to the White House, and I think you all know how much traction that got from everywhere. We want to start doing a lot more of that. The challenge among associations is somebody has to be the ringleader. Somebody has to call the troops together and say, we're going to do this, who wants on? And we feel like SPJ is best suited for that. So that meeting's taking place tomorrow. We did another joint release recently about the EPA and their lack of transparency. And then, of course, in tying into the vision, I have always looked at the communications strategist was part of that. And I think Dave can attest that when the Foley incident, the Foley tragedy went down a few weeks ago, we were on it quick, we were out quick, and Dave started getting calls from TV stations on the spot who wanted to go on the air, including CNN, which didn't work out in the end. But all of those things, I think, tied together, the advocacy, the groups meeting, we're starting to show these other groups, look what we can do. We've done these big joint releases. We're on things quick. So we're a group that can lead it. So come aboard. So that's just an update on our advocacy efforts. And then the partnerships meetings, again, I'll talk about with these other groups tomorrow. But in the past week, I have been approached by two groups, and I'd rather not share it now, but I've been approached by two groups. One who's interested in perhaps becoming a community within SPJ, and kind of not disbanding, but it's hard for them to manage their association as a standalone anymore. So they're interested in talking about becoming a community within SPJ. And then another group wants to talk about providing back office solutions for event planning, bookkeeping perhaps, and membership. So I'm continuing to have conversations with other executive directors and leaders on those things. So that's an update. Any questions?
Questions? Bill?
What has the impact been on staff? Still got enough people?
So far, so good. But I think if we get more of many of these, then we're going to have to price it accordingly so that we can hire part-time people to come in and help carry the load. And I think that's going to mean that each staffer, whatever realm it may be, we'll say Sarah perhaps, we'll have to figure out if she's going to be managing somebody, what her roles and responsibilities might be. So we'll have to start thinking about that if we get more.
Patty, did you have a question?
Can you give us a sense of the types of groups that are meeting tomorrow? How many? I mean, are there, I just, in terms of progress, are these groups ready to say, yeah, let's do this? Or
I think everybody who's going to be on this group, Dave's been working closely. Teresa Schmetting actually is the woman who should get credit for really pulling this together. She's the president/executive director, kind of the American Copy Editor Society. So she's awesome. Yeah. And she's a doer, and she's got good ideas. And so when she approached us and said, hey, given all the stuff we've been talking about doing joint things, would it make sense to do that? I'll do it. And I said, yeah, do it. So then she and Dave worked closely together. We have 15 to 20 groups. Most of them, if not all, were groups that signed on to that letter to the White House. So they've already demonstrated that they're interested and engaged in doing it. But it's groups, and I don't want to say like this group will specifically be there because I don't have the attendee list, but it's what you would expect. It's ASNE, it's ONA, the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, National Association of Black Journalists. So when you think of an association, a journalism association, they were reached out to, and many of them are coming.
Great. That's wonderful. Is this meeting limited to the leaders? Any of us walk in.
I don't think that, I mean, like most things we do, we love transparency. I don't know if most people get a lot out of it. It's not seated as like a session. It's a meeting table. So I don't know if anybody would care if you came in. I don't think. There's not going to be anything, we're not streaming it, but I don't think there's going to be anything in there that's super secret. And if there is, I think at any point they could ask people to leave if they didn't feel comfortable. The question I have with a lot, and I run into this all the time, is how much can we talk about things if membership hasn't been informed? Because a lot of it's just brainstorming, and then when they take it back to their board, they may realize the board doesn't support it. So I don't think people would want a bunch of crazy information getting out there of something that may never happen. But that happens with every board meeting.
No, it should be a good meeting. I don't have the agenda in front of me, but there are a variety of topics that various folks wanted to talk about. Someone from Pointer's going to talk about getting research out to journalists. It's useful. A couple other topics too, but
a lot of it's membership, insider baseball. How are you dealing with membership changes? What can we do? Is there an opportunity for joint membership type components or incentives or things like that? So we all have the same problems. SPJ is not unique in the sense of how it runs, what it does, or the challenges that it faces. We're all the same boat.
And forgive me for not knowing this. Have we publicized this yet in any way? Did you write something out in the quill?
No.
So are we trying to keep this kind of a limited conversation? And at what point would we go public and seek member input?
Well, I guess I'm not sure what you're asking, but in terms of promoting the meeting tomorrow,
No,
no,
not the meeting. The concept of having joint groups come together under one big SPJ tent.
Yeah, we have not promoted that as any sort of plan because I don't think it can be. I think that's an ideal scenario where we're all working together and developing partnerships. I don't think we would ever want to mislead people and tell them that they would be coming under the SPJ tent because they wouldn't. And frankly, nobody would want to. I mean, they have their own identities and their own missions for a reason. And so, creating any sort of scenario where they may feel like these groups are being devalued, it's not smart and it won't happen and it would actually be counterproductive. So really the message is we're going to continue to look for ways to partner, but to announce it as some grand, big plan, I don't have any intention of doing that because I don't know what it's going to look like. But as partnerships develop and we do something together, then we would.
David and Sunny?
I'm sorry, the meeting again is when?
It is tomorrow.
Tomorrow 1 to 5.
1 to 5.
Presidential, right.
And it's really just a brainstorming session with these leaders, presidents and executive directors.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
I don't expect if anything concrete to come out of it.
No, I doubt. But potentially collaborations, and that's, I think, you. Sunny?
No, I was just gonna. It's probably not the best term to use, but I like to think of it as marriages of convenience. Basically, it's a chance for leaders of a lot of different groups who are all suffering from some of the same issues regarding membership and the impact of what's happening in the business. Get a chance to talk about ways we can do things together that seem smart. And I would not ever use the idea that the big SPJ tent because frankly some folks would get really offended by that. And to me, it's just smart business to try to figure out how we can do business together.
Well, not to be, I'm reading over your memo here, and I'm looking at a bullet point at page 25. SPJ will be entrenched as the collective voice on matters related to journalism and its role in democracy. So, my shorthand is, we're looking to be the SPJ tent, and of course we don't want to alienate anybody this early in the discussions.
Right.
So when I go back to my region, I need to have language that is not going to set off alarm bells, but that we can share this concept. I love the whole plan.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to know how to parse it right now and where we are in terms of public release of these discussions.
I can answer that. I think the answer is if people ask or you want to tell them is SPJ is looking to partner with every other journalism association in every single way. Where that statement came from is when I look at each individual association and I've talked to other executive directors, I've tried to find out what is it that SPJ does or can do that other groups can't. Like what is our contribution? because we all kind of do the same things. But when you look at each group, you ask, what's their mission? What's the contribution? Our contribution, our greatest contribution is advocacy. It's what we can do. We can fight. So when I talk about SPJ will be the voice, I'm talking in terms of advocacy. When we speak on something, we speak on behalf of all of the other 40 journalism associations that were on the letter to the White House. That's an example of what I mean by when I say we will be the voice that people come to for general advocacy. But there may be a situation where if it's an issue, it's an immigration and journalism issue, we may ask NAHJ to take the lead on that, and we lend our support, and Jennifer writes the press release, and we do some of the back office work to help them, and they are the go-to because they can speak to it better than what we can do. So does that help you?
It does, but just again, in the interest of transparency, having you write something in the quill early that talks about the conversation, so everybody's kind of early informed, might be something to consider.
Pia, did you want to add?
Well, Joe kind of stole my thunder because I was going to use the letter to the White House as an example. And I think another example to use, if I'm understanding this correctly, would be the partnership that we already have with RTDNA that has, I think we all agree, let us put on conventions that are, I mean, we always have good conventions, but they've just been amazing. So a working partnership with other organizations, would that be an appropriate term? So anyways.
Thanks, Pia. And my column for Quill, this issue is on this whole stuff too. So.
Is it her one?
That's just coming out. When's that coming out?
It's out.
It's out.
It just came out.
We just got it.
I haven't
Tuesday.
You live in the desert.
The
I barely got mine.
It's got electricity. So, okay, well, thanks, Joe. It's exciting, and as things develop, I'm sure you'll share them with everybody. All right, future springboard meetings. Joe.
Yeah, you're all getting tired of listening to me. So, quick and short, it's no longer possible to have springboard meetings in Indianapolis. We are becoming a hotbed for convention business. We've already been told that there is no rooms for our giant group, so however many of you there are, in 2016 at any downtown hotels, which would put us out near the airport again, and I do not want to do that, and I don't think anybody who attended the meeting wants to do that. So we think it's time to start considering moving the springboard meetings around the country, doing different options, meeting in one place all the time. We thought about it a lot, and so staff is recommending that we try to schedule our springboard meetings at the same location where we'll be having the conference that year. So, for instance, this year's spring meeting would have been here. Next year's spring meeting, if we didn't already have a contract with Indy. So next year's in Indy. I don't want to confuse anybody. If we didn't already have a contract next year, the springboard meeting would be in Orlando. 2016, the springboard meeting, if this group supports it, will be in New Orleans. So that's the idea. We felt like it would give leadership an opportunity to at least see the property.
Twice in 1 year?
Twice in 1 year, you'd have to go, I know. And we also think it may help a little bit in hotel negotiations, because when we negotiate hotel contracts moving forward, we could also tell them we're going to bring so many room nights, so much food and beverage, which may help lower the room rate for the conference a smidge or get us other concessions. So I'm just asking for the board to nod its head if it's comfortable with having springboard meetings, not in Indianapolis, but around the country, and we kind of tie them in to the future convention city, assuming it's feasible and possible.
Dana, did you want to say something?
I was going to ask a question that probably not that many people care about. So the executive committee, we typically go to that site in January, although it's not required. So would we change that?
We could.
I suppose we could have that in Indianapolis.
We could do that, or we, the face-to-face, the Skype. We could go anywhere. Go to your hometown. It used to be the tradition when I started SPJ was one of the meetings was at the president's hometown.
I know.
So there is no tradition on exec. There's no tradition on exec meetings. We'll do whatever we want. Go wherever we want.
Michael?
I don't have a preference for just floating this out there. Would it make sense just to meet wherever it's cheapest for all of us to go?
It's impossible to have a location that's cheapest for all of us to go.
I'm just wondering, like, if we move the convention around, would it be cheaper just to meet in Dallas, Chicago, Atlanta, like that? Just trying to keep, I don't know, I'm just throwing the idea out there that maybe this is the cheapest way to go, would be the best way to go.
We looked at that, and the challenge is, while it may be cheap for me to get to Chicago, it's not cheap for somebody else. The room rates may be higher in Chicago. The thing that really swung it for us was being able to use it in our negotiation for the hotel. That was it. We looked at Denver. I looked at Denver a lot because of the time zone. Nobody has to get up super early, stay up super late. It's a fairly easy city to get in and out of. It's a hub. So I looked at that too.
I just wanted to add, in support of that, the executive committee met here in January, considering the expanse of this place. That was really helpful to have an idea of, what the space was going to be like. How do we sell this? How do we tell people, the pros and cons? And so I think it would really benefit the board to go to a property first.
Do you need a motion?
I don't think so. I don't think it has to be an official board action. That's just how we'll plan moving forward if the group's comfortable with it.
Great idea.
Robert, remind me to ask this at the foundation meeting tomorrow too. I don't think I asked Chris to put it on your agenda.
Okay. Just show hands of folks who kind of support that concept. All right, so you have it.
Thanks.
Chapter action.
So this list is happily shorter than we had in the past couple meetings, but is a little bit longer because we are now in our second year of cleaning out the garage, so we are inactivating chapters that have not filed for 2 consecutive years. I will ask you, if you're looking at it, to mark off Wilkes University in Region 1 from the inactivation list. They now have an advisor and are ready to get going again. So we will not be inactivating them. That's Wilkes University. California State University in Sacramento is seeking a charter. I do have their full packet of materials if you would like that. But everything is in order. They're ready to go. We do need board action on that one to approve their charter. And then the rest are inactivations.
I'd like to say that University of Idaho met Tuesday night and are taking steps to correct and get back into good graces.
Okay, so mark off University of Idaho, Region 10 as well, please.
And so is the University of Arizona.
Yes.
I won't be talking to someone. Anything else?
Now that you have time.
I know. Anything else on chapter? Patty?
It's not here, but I think I read somewhere that it's incredibly difficult to get reactivated once you're deactivated.
It is not, actually. All I need is an email from the student advisor or pro people who are wanting to get going again. One thing to remember when somebody contacts you and says, hey, we want to do this over again, is that they have to be members. Over the last 6 months, I've gotten several that have started and want to get going, and we kind of tell everybody to get them up on the website and all that stuff, and the advisor's not a member, and neither are any of the students. So if you have someone contact you about that, please encourage them to join, and then let me know, and really from there it's a matter of a couple emails, and they're off and running.
Bill?
I move to approve the staff recommendation.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
Sue?
Thank you.
Me?
Oh, what?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Basically, your statement once you get a name.
Speaking of Dana, communities update.
Well, first I want to recognize Michael Fitzgerald, who's here, who has helped lead the freelance community. So the freelance community got started about a year ago. It was officially recognized by this board in April. They did a soft launch of the beta test of the site. This one differs significantly from SPJ Digital in that almost everything SPJ Freelance offers is behind the paywall, and that was deliberate. There's a discussion board, a jobs board. What are some of the other?
We have resources, like some of the videos that we put together under your leadership. We're working on getting the freelance resource guide updated and up on the site in HTML form. We have a calendar, a nascent calendar. Those are probably the primary things right now. And then our hope is that we'll start to see some groups of interest within the freelance community form. We haven't seen that yet.
So initially, we weren't quite sure how this works, so we kind of decided we would build everything and expect that they will come. We have not had the opportunity to do outreach. I want to work with Jennifer to kind of come up with a plan on how we can do some outreach. Robin Sekula has organized a meetup tonight at 8:30. If anybody wants to come, we're going to meet in front of Fuse and then head out somewhere else after that.
We're going to meet at 9 now.
Oh, we're going to meet
She
at
sent
9
a-
now.
She sent a note this morning.
Oh.
Because of the.
Would have been nice if you told me that.
Because of the reception.
Okay. Oh, okay. Awesome. All right. So we're doing a meetup tonight, and the reason behind that is currently the committee or community is still kind of operating like a committee in that the same people are involved. David, Michael, myself, Anna Pratt, Hazel Becker. We need to get some new people involved, some people that are good with outreach, some people that have areas of passion that can help push this forward. So we need to come up with an outreach plan. We started by doing a mass email to everybody in our database that has expressed an interest in freelance when they signed up for their membership. We're starting to do some, little organic marketing, but we need to do more than that to help this grow. I think this community of all of them probably has the greatest potential. We just haven't really made that first big push forward. Any questions about freelance community? The next one is SPJ Digital. We approved this on the board call on August 20th. Alex Veneman from Chicago came to me and said, hey, I'd like to do this. Go ahead. So I'd love to take credit for it, but he did everything. And there's been a nice group of people involved. And when I say nice, I mean size-wise. I think we've got about 35 people. On that call, Sue had asked me what percent are members, and I think it was 82%. 82% are members, so we still have some people that aren't members, but we think that's okay because they're learning about SPJ, we're still furthering our mission, and we hope at some point they will join SPJ. They'll have access to all the public tools, which would be like the Google Plus community, Twitter, they can read the blog, but they won't be columnists for Quill, and they won't be participating on the blog, as far as I know. We're kind of, feeling this out. Claudia, the chair of Gen J, and I have had a couple discussions. She is interested in morphing the committee into a community, again, to get more energy, to spread their resources. They want to shift their mission a little bit, and she has some specific ideas of what she'd like to do. So we're going to be talking about potentially forming a community there. And then Brett and I had one very short conversation in the form of a tweet about thinking about forming a community that would benefit students. So we haven't really made any progress there, but that's going to be one of the big things I want to focus on next year is supporting the communities, figuring out what works, what doesn't work, recognizing that each one's going to be a little bit different and learning as we go. Staff support, Tara is going to be supporting the communities as well, so she and I are working together on that, and then Billy is providing technical assistance. So that's where we stand now.
Thank you, Dana. Really appreciate the time you put into that. Excited for this year. Next, committee appointments.
I will just state this very, very briefly. The bylaws do not require the president or president-elect to have the board approve appointments, but for a lot of different reasons, I felt it was important in the name of transparency to share that information with the board and to give the board the opportunity to weigh in and have some say. So I went to each of the chairs and co-chairs that I was interested in appointing, asked them to give me a bio and a little bit of their SPJ experience. So you've got that in your packet. It's on page 52 through 54. Not all, no, whatever, through 56. So not all of the committees are represented. Bylaws, it's just kind of one of those committees that sort of rolls over every year, and Bob Becker has graciously agreed to continue doing that. Resolutions, Steve Diamond and Sonny Alvarado both expressed an interest at the spring board meeting to doing that, so they're not included, but they operate in a little bit of a different basis. So I respectfully request that you approve my appointments.
So moved.
I move that we approve President-elect's appointments.
Second.
Okay. Discussion? Michael has his big hand out.
No, I thank you for doing this. I know you don't have to in the bylaws, but there are two things that I thought were very helpful. One, I didn't know everything about these committee chairmen, even though I see their names, and I guess I could go to each committee section and click on their little bio and read that, but to have it in one place is really nice. And two, oftentimes, I don't know if you guys get asked, but I get asked questions at the convention, who's going to be in charge of this? And I'm like, I don't know. Well, how come you don't know? You're on the board. It's like, because I don't get to do that. So just knowing that this is what is here makes it easy to talk to people. It made it easier in RD caucus to know that Andy was in charge of awards. I would never have found that out until whenever. So I'm glad you did this. Even though it's on the bylaws, I hope it becomes a thing.
Thank you. Well, we've actually talked about how we want to approach the bylaws because it doesn't say that this is necessary. What we had talked about amongst ourselves was perhaps making this a tradition. So we're not locking somebody in, 10 years down the road, but we like this concept. And what we thought is we'll try it this year. If it works, great. Then Paul can choose to do it next year, and then Lynn the year after that, and so on.
Andy?
This might be a little persnickety, but could I make a motion to separate the words from the next approval so I could not vote no?
Well, you can abstain if you want.
Well, I want to approve the others.
But abstaining essentially means you're not speaking out against it, but you're.
That's fine, Joe.
Conflicts of interest arise. The key here is that it's pointed out that because you have a conflict does not mean that you cannot vote. It means as long as everybody in the room is comfortable with you voting and they accept that, then you can vote. I can't tell you how you feel personally, but from a point of order, you are allowed to vote even though your name's on it, as long as the conflict is disclosed, which it now has been.
It's not a big deal, but I'd rather not. So.
Because you don't want to vote no?
We could vote on each committee as I'd rather do them as a block, but you want to do them one by one.
It's okay, Andy. It's okay.
It's a big vote anyway.
Yeah, we'll do
just whisper.
That's the motion on the table.
What's the motion? 'Cause I thought
Did we approve the slate of committee chairs and co-chairs
These are
as proposed?
Yeah, these are recommendations.
Yeah, the recommendations. Did we approve her recommendations?
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I didn't vote for this.
We know how you feel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, cool. That was helpful. Recognition of retiring board members. This is where we say thank you for your time that you spent volunteering to help this organization, and I think that's really important. Some of you will be stepping down, and I want to recognize you for that. I think we all do. The first person is Sunny, who I'm not sure where Sunny wants to go.
He's already stepped down.
I saw Sonny standing out there. Someone's complaining to him about something about SPJ, and he's nodding. So.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll recognize him when he comes back in. But David Sheets, David, come on up here and get your. Appreciate all you've done, and for the freelance work and all the things. Carl, come on. Really appreciate it.
Number 5, the St. Louis chapter.
Susan Stevens.
Wonderful.
Susan. And we appreciate all your comments.
I appreciate all of you. People have my utmost respect and thanks for hanging in there.
All right. You too. Kim Fox. Kim. And then the last person, Sunny Alvarado. Sunny, we appreciate it.
As soon as I have a ball of paint
He lost his house in a tornado.
Great. Public comment period. Would anyone like to express some things? What we'll do is we'll do committee reports. Well, let's do committee reports before then. Public comment period. And then we go on to the executive director evaluation, which is executive session. So committee reports, I see Steve here. Steve, do you want to chime in, add anything to your report?
I'll answer any questions anybody has, but it should be pretty self-explanatory.
All good. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate your service. Let's see, who else do we have here? Michael, I don't know if you wanted to add anything. You guys already talked. Freelance-wise, all good. Claudia, anything to add? Becky.
I have something to add. First of all, I, in error, forgot to thank Sonny, John Eswin, and Howard Dubin for their incredible support of our project. We couldn't have done it without them. I also want to say that we will have a report to leadership by the end of October. And a couple of things I really wanted to point out, because I think that this is really important. I think you all know we did a national survey of high school journalism teachers to find out the state of high school journalism in America. Because people said, well, journalism's dying. We found out that most programs, 69% of the programs said they feel secure. Of the ones who don't feel secure, it wasn't because journalism was dying. That was the third reason why their programs were being closed. The first reason the programs are being closed is lack of student interest. Students don't care. And that's really quite an alarming concern. We found that 1/3 of administrators do censor or do at least look at newspapers and other material out of journalism classes before they are released. We found out that 1/4 of the high school journalism teachers have absolutely no training in journalism. None. Zip and doodah. Here's the part that really upset most of the members of the committee. Of all the people we surveyed, 53% say that their schools receive absolutely no support from local professional journalism. And it's even worse for colleges and universities. 56.1% said that they receive no support from colleges and universities. Folks, where are we going to get our future journalists? Most likely, most of us started in high school. And so, you know, in our conclusions, one of the things we're saying is we need to step it up on the pro level and on the college and university level to reach out to the high schools, get the kids involved. We found that about 10% of the schools reported that their high school journalism programs are now a dumping ground for the kids that the administration doesn't know what else to do with. So it's like, you know, study hall. Put them in a journalism class. And that's really, you know, quite distressing. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. And as I said, the full report will be out by the end of October. The book has been accepted for publication by New Forms Press, and it will be out next spring. Yay!
Thank you, Becky, for all your work. Yeah, Bill?
Sounds like a topic for a press release to me.
Oh,
when you're ready to do that, but you should.
About
Put a press release out.
Yes, I would love to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hi, PR person. Hi.
Thank you. Anything, Dana, did you want to talk about membership at all? No. No? All right.
No, I'll just say something very briefly. So, I took that on this year. We weren't going to do anything, but it ended up I really didn't have time to do anything, and a couple of things that I tried didn't really work. And obviously, membership is really important, so that's not a good strategy moving forward. So, Robin Sekula is taking it over. She's already actually started. Since she was taking over for me, I just kind of walked away and let her start. And she has jumped in. She's got all kinds of ideas. She and Joe are planning a strategy session discussion. I imagine that will involve Tara and Linda as well. To talk about things for next year, but she's got all kinds of ideas, all kinds of energy. So I'm really, really excited about the potential for membership this year.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. Public comment. Anything anybody wants to say from the public? I don't know, Tara, do we have comments online?
Everybody's here. That ever watched it. So, no, we do not.
All right.
I don't know if that's
All the people watching this right now. Are we viral?
No, I think Joe's wife was watching. She may be the only one.
Dominic is going to be on the committee, yes. He was originally going to be the chair, and he decided kind of at the last minute that he had other things that he needed to focus on, so Robin stepped up and she's going to choose another co-chair. Hasn't done that yet, which is why there wasn't one in the packet, but he's gonna stay on. There's some things that he's really, really good at, that he'll be a good support.
All right, any other business anyone wants to bring up before we go into executive session? Okay.
We go into executive session.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
For the purpose of approving the evaluation.
To discuss the executive director's review and evaluation, and then we'll come out of executive session if we make any decision, such as firing, or giving him a raise.
In other words,
Or what